Hey guys, this is Robbie here from CrossFit South Bend. Today we're going to try to answer the question, is my thyroid too slow? Not my thyroid, but is your thyroid or someone's thyroid who you might know too slow? Today we're going to try to answer that question, give you a lowdown on hypothyroidism, kind of a hypothyroidism 101 class. So I get this question a lot these days, especially from women. Why? Well, statistically speaking, this disproportionately affects women. Does that mean men can't get it? Absolutely not. Men can and do get it, but by and large, this affects women. And a lot of women these days are dealing with things like fatigue, weight gain, inability to lose weight, even if they're trying to diet and exercise. If you saw our video with Angie a few months ago, she was someone who was told by her doctor to eat less and work out more, and she actually gained weight doing that with her hypothyroidism. And when we changed her nutrition for the better, that made a big difference, where she lost quite a bit of weight and started feeling better. So people can kind of diet and exercise correctly, but not get the results they want. With hypothyroidism, they can have cold extremities, low libido, so on and so forth. So today we're going to give you kind of the lowdown on what hypothyroidism is, what are the symptoms, what causes it, excuse me, what are some blood tests you can run with your doctor to see if you have it, and then finally, what's the problem with the standard of care. So before we get started, something that you should 100% keep in mind, especially as we talk about these more specialized health topics that kind of swerve into the medical realm, so to speak. I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV. Nothing I say is meant to diagnose, treat, prescribe, cure, anything like that. Don't stop any treatment that your doctor has prescribed unless specifically told to do so by your doctor, and don't start any new treatment unless talking to your doctor first. Okay, so I'm not a medical professional. This is for general educational purposes only. Okay, that being said, let's talk about what is your thyroid. So your thyroid, people have heard the term, but they don't quite know what that means. So your thyroid is a butterfly-shaped endocrine gland, kind of a hormone gland in the middle of your neck. If you're a guy, it's right where or pretty close to where your Adam's apple is. It's in your neck, and it controls, among other things, your metabolism. So, some people say, well, thyroid equals metabolism. Well, yes and no. I mean, that's part of the story, but we don't want to be reductionist here and just say that thyroid equals metabolism. There's a lot more to things than just, thyroid controlling metabolism. Thyroid has an effect on a lot of different things. So, what's your metabolism? People say, oh, I have a fast metabolism, I have a slow metabolism. Basically, your metabolism, in essence, is the rate of cellular processes in your body. So if the cellular processes are going too slow, you're going to get all the symptoms we're going to talk about. You'll feel tired. Your sex drive won't be where it should be. You will not be able to lose weight. You won't be able to recover well from workouts. You'll be cold rather than the right temperature. So, and if it's too fast, if you have hyperthyroidism, for example, which we'll talk about in a future video, all these are reversed. You got all the energy in the world. Your libido is on overdrive. You lose weight very rapidly. You feel hot all the time. You're sweating. So that's really, the metabolism is the rate of cellular processes, and your thyroid plays a very large role in controlling that. Okay? Now, what is hypothyroidism? Well, hypo is just sort of a prefix meaning, it can mean a lot of different things in different contexts, under and lower. In this case, it means kind of lower thyroid functioning. So hypothyroidism literally just means slow thyroid function or lower thyroid functioning. So here, your thyroid is functioning too slowly. Now, we need to really be aware here of kind of the terminology we're using to diagnose something. So, excuse me, the terminology we're using to kind of give a name to a cluster of symptoms. If you went into a doctor and you said, my head aches, and he says, oh, well, you have headachy syndrome, you'd be like, thanks. That didn't really help me too much. Similarly here, hypothyroidism can be a helpful way to think about a cluster of symptoms, but by itself, that is not enough to understand what really is going on in your body. Why? In a normal functioning human body, the thyroid does not function slowly. If the thyroid is functioning slowly, there's some reason why it is. And a diagnosis by your doctor of hypothyroidism by itself does not tell you what the cause is of hypothyroidism. As we'll talk about later, this cause is incredibly important. It makes all the difference in the world if your hypothyroidism is due to iodine deficiency, for example, which is the main cause in third world countries. In first world countries, the main cause is actually autoimmunity. It's Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And those two different causes are worlds apart. And it makes an enormous difference in treatment and getting better what the underlying cause is. So to say your thyroid is functioning too slowly is just a piece of the puzzle. You can't just stop there and say, oh, we're going to give you some stuff to help your thyroid function, at its normal level. Because if you don't figure out why the thyroid is functioning too slowly, you've missed a gigantic piece of what's going on. There could be all sorts of reasons why the thyroid is functioning too slowly. So hypothyroidism is a piece of the puzzle, but you got to go deeper than that, okay? What are the symptoms of hypothyroidism? So again, things like fatigue, low libido, weight gain, cold extremities, paresthesia, basically just meaning numbness and tingling in your extremities. All of these things kind of can pretty easily, you can kind of figure out, if my body is kind of going too slow with its cellular processes, this makes sense, that I would be tired, my sex drive wouldn't be where it should be, that I would be not able to lose weight, all these different things. So these are the symptoms of hypothyroidism. Now, again, we need to be very clear here about symptoms versus a clear picture of what's actually going on. So what do I mean by that? I mean that symptoms never uniquely pick out one particular disease, except in very, very, very rare cases. These symptoms that we're talking about with hypothyroidism are consistent with lots of different chronic conditions. You could have adrenal fatigue, which we talked about in another video, for example, which is really HPA axis dysfunction, where you're not producing enough cortisol, and that could lead to similar symptoms here. You could have fibromyalgia. You could have lots of different things that lead to similar symptoms. These symptoms, just by themselves, do not uniquely pick out hypothyroidism. So you have to talk with someone who's qualified, who knows what they're doing, to figure out whether you actually have hypothyroidism. I'm sure you've heard the saying, any lawyer that represents himself as a fool for a client. It's the same thing with self-diagnosis. Don't self-diagnose. Don't say, oh, I've got those symptoms, I have hypothyroidism. No, you got to work with a qualified practitioner to find out if that's actually the case. So these are a cluster of symptoms that kind of lead us in the direction of investigation, but by themselves, they are not enough to uniquely say that you have hypothyroidism. Okay, what's the main cause of hypothyroidism? Now again, this is this really important point that I was trying to allude to earlier. Hypothyroidism just means your thyroid is functioning slowly. But just like if someone were to say, well, your car's not working properly, that doesn't tell you all the story. You need to figure out why your car's not working properly. The same thing is true with your thyroid functioning too slowly. That doesn't tell you anything about the cause. It just tells you your thyroid's functioning too slowly. There could be all sorts of different causes. Again, in the third world, in most kind of third world countries, it's due to an iodine deficiency. And that's pretty easily corrected with iodine supplementation. In the first world, it's usually caused by autoimmunity. Now we'll do a whole video on autoimmunity later on, but basically autoimmunity is where your own body attacks your own cells. Your own immune system attacks your own cells, whether it be the myelin sheaths of your nerves. That's going to be multiple sclerosis. It's, if it's attacking the joint cells, that's going to be rheumatoid arthritis. If it's attacking the beta cells of your pancreas, that's going to be type 1 diabetes. So in all those cases, your immune system, which is supposed to protect you from outside forces, it's actually attacking your own cells. And if you were to treat autoimmune hypothyroidism, for example, by just giving someone a whole bunch of iodine, that would be really, 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 really problematic. There are all sorts of studies that show that excess iodine consumption in the case of autoimmune hypothyroidism is actually detrimental to treatment. So, you need to be clear on what the cause is. And as we'll talk about, one of the problems with the standard of care currently in sort of the Western medical paradigm is they just sort of test for are your thyroid levels low or not? They don't usually test for thyroid antibodies, which would tell you if you have an autoimmune disease. Why is that so important? It's so important for a couple reasons. It's important because if you have autoimmune hypothyroidism and you just take something like, let's say, Synthroid or levothyroxine, some synthetic T4 replacement, you are just controlling symptoms at that point. You are basically making it so that your thyroid level is low, and you're taking something to kind of artificially raise that, but all the while your immune system is progressively destroying your thyroid. When you have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, your body is quite literally destroying your thyroid. People who have Hashimoto's thyroiditis that goes untreated for years and years and years literally can end up with half or a quarter of their thyroid because their body has destroyed all the rest. So if you just are treating symptoms without treating the underlying cause, you're leaving your thyroid open to further sort of destruction by your own body, which isn't good. The second reason is that when you have one autoimmune disease, you are at a much, much, much greater risk for a second or third autoimmune disease. Levothyroxine and Synthroid and all these synthetic T4 replacements don't fix the underlying autoimmune process that's going on. And if you don't fix that underlying autoimmune process, not only is your thyroid at risk of getting destroyed further, but you're at the risk of getting another autoimmune disease. It could be rheumatoid arthritis, or it could be fibromyalgia. It could be lots of different things. You don't want more and more autoimmune diseases. So this really makes a difference. The third reason why this is so important is that with the symptom control approach, you never really fix the problem. With the symptom control approach, you have to keep taking a pill for the rest of your life to make up for the lack of thyroid hormone. However, if you address the cause, if you fix the underlying autoimmune process that's destroying your thyroid and making it so that you can't produce enough thyroid hormone, you thereby also fix the symptoms. So, in other words, if you just try to fix these symptoms with different prescription drugs, you're just going to be playing symptom whack-a-mole while not fixing the underlying cause. But if we fix the underlying autoimmune process that's leading to these symptoms, that is also going to fix the symptoms. So fixing just the symptoms does not fix the cause, but fixing the cause does fix the symptoms. So hopefully that makes sense of why that's so important. You need to understand that in first world countries, most people who have hypothyroidism have autoimmune hypothyroidism. Now, how do you find out, again, with your doctor? Don't self-diagnose. Work with a qualified practitioner here. How do you find out if you have hypothyroidism? Well, again, one of the problems here is that most doctors will run TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, which just, by the way, isn't a thyroid hormone. Now, that isn't to say it isn't important, but it isn't a thyroid hormone. It's the signal that gets sent from your pituitary to your thyroid saying, hey, please make some more thyroid hormone, or produce less, depending on whether you have hypo or hyperthyroidism. And the problem with that is that that's just one marker. There's so many other markers that give you a better sense of how your thyroid's actually functioning. For example, free T3 and free T4 are measures of how much thyroid hormone you're actually producing in your body. So this gets a little bit complicated, and we might do a future video where I kind of explain this in more detail. But basically, you have two types of T4 in your body and two types of T3 in this particular instance that we're talking about. You can have total T4 and free T4 and total T3 and free T3. Total is a measure of the amount that you've kind of got in savings, to use a financial analogy. Free T4 and free T3 are the amount that you have in checking, the amount that you have available to actually make your body processes work the way they should. So you could have a lot in savings but very little in checking, and you could still feel crappy. So when your doctor tests your total T4 and says, oh, it's fine, well, that could be the case, but your free T4 or free T3 might be low. So it's important not just to test your TSH, but to test your free T3 and free T4 as well. Even beyond that, again, these three things only tell you whether you have a thyroid that's functioning slowly or functioning too quickly in the case of hyperthyroidism. They don't tell you the reason why. Now, if your doctor is open to it, something that you should consider asking about, especially if you suspect that this might be a situation for you, is getting your antibodies tested, getting your thyroglobulin antibodies tested and your thyroid peroxidase antibodies tested. These are antibodies produced against your thyroid by your immune system, mistakenly, because your immune system is not supposed to attack your own body systems, and these lead to the destruction of the thyroid. So it's not just enough to know, hey, is my thyroid too slow, or is the thyroid hormone low? We need to know what's the cause of that. Is that an autoimmune process? Is it because your adrenal glands aren't functioning properly? Is it because you're deficient in iodine? Again, a very rare case in the first world. We need to know the cause. And most doctors will just say, no, I'm not going to run this because it doesn't change my treatment. And they're absolutely right. It doesn't change their treatment because their treatment is just symptom control. They'll give you synthetic T4 to artificially raise your T4 or T3 levels. Meanwhile, the autoimmune process that's going on underneath stays unfixed, and that can lead to other autoimmune conditions. It makes it so you have to take medication for the rest of your life, and it leads to, the ultimate destruction of a large part of your thyroid. So that's not good. So I would strongly recommend, if your doctor is okay with it, asking to see if you can get these things tested to find out if you have an autoimmune version of hypothyroidism or not. What's the problem with the standard of care? Hopefully from everything I've said thus far, you've got a little bit of a sense of what's going on with that. The problem here is symptom control. And there's nothing wrong with symptom control temporarily to try to get someone back on their feet when they're feeling really not good. What's wrong is when you just use symptom control without investigating what the underlying cause is. That's what's wrong. Symptom control for the rest of your life is just a completely flawed strategy. And as we'll see when we talk about something like heartburn, or statins for cholesterol, or any one of a number of different prescription medications that are really just symptom control, we run into the same issue here. So the problem here is that the standard of care just says, oh, your thyroid is low, let's give you some thyroid hormone. But that just misses the point. It misses what is causing your thyroid to be low. Again, in a normal, functioning, healthy human being, your thyroid doesn't just magically start going slowly. It just doesn't happen. There is always a reason why your thyroid is not operating the way it should be, and that reason should be investigated. It should be investigated, is this an autoimmune process? Is this an iodine deficiency? Is this adrenal insufficiency? There are lots of other causes besides those, but those are three that just kind of come to mind and tend to be ones to be explored. So you need to understand what that that reason is, because again, if you just take the standard of care, which is synthetic T4, Synthroid, and levothyroxine, you will not fix the underlying cause of your hypothyroidism, which means that you're going to constantly be playing symptom whack-a-mole. 2, you are at much greater risk for further autoimmune diseases. Once you have one autoimmune disease, your chances of getting a second or a third go up dramatically. And 3, you risk having your body long-term ultimately destroy your thyroid by not fixing this underlying autoimmune process. So it makes all the difference in the world to figure out what is causing your hypothyroidism. It's not enough to just say, well, my thyroid's too slow, let me get some thyroid hormone. And just by the way, for all those who are taking something like Thyroid or Armor or something like that, the same issue applies there. That might be more natural, but the same issue applies there. If you aren't fixing the underlying cause, if you're just treating symptoms, you are going to run into these exact same issues. So both the alternative health community and the standard Western medical community have issues when all they're doing is treating symptoms. You have to make sure that you're addressing the underlying cause so that you get to the root of the issue and fix not just the cause, not just fix the symptoms, but you also fix the cause as well. All right, guys, so hopefully you now have a sense of what hypothyroidism is, what causes it, what the symptoms are, what the problem with the standard of care is, some blood tests you can get to see if this is something that you're genuinely dealing with. In future videos, we'll talk more about things you might be able to do in terms of functional diagnostic nutrition, or functional medicine care to try to fix these issues in conjunction with talking with your doctor or qualified medical practitioner. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.